Conservative tax-cutting proposal could lead to a significantly tighter squeeze on the public finances next year. That's according to the Independent Institute for Fiscal Studies. George Osborne wants to block the planned increase in national insurance for those earning up to £45,400. He described it as a tax on recovery. Our economics editor, Stephanie Flanders, is here with me to look at the figures. Stephanie.
Thanks, Hugh. Well, the Conservatives have always said they would cut borrowing further and faster than Labour, relying more on spending cuts than increases in tax. Now, our question to them was how? Well, today they've given us a piece of the answer, which does open up some distance between them and Labour for the next 2 years. But George Osborne hasn't provided any more detail on how he would cut borrowing faster after that. He says he'll protect the NHS, defence and overseas aid from extra cuts, but the new efficiency savings will help him cut other spending by £6 billion. That's areas like education, housing and transport. Now that's on top of the £5 billion cut Labour was already planning, meaning an overall reduction in spending by those departments of £11 billion this year, or more than 5%. Now critics have questioned whether the savings will actually happen. But even if they do, the key point is that the Conservatives would use very few of those savings to bring down borrowing long term.
On the face of it, this announcement looks at odds with the Conservatives' claim that the top priority is to get government borrowing down over the next few years. They're in effect using up £6 billion of spending cuts, or efficiency savings if you prefer, in order to finance this tax cut, and so therefore it's not contributing to the task of getting government borrowing down over the next few years.
Now, the Conservatives say the national insurance rise would hit the recovery next year by making it more expensive for firms to create jobs. But the extra spending cuts this year would see a Tory government take £29 billion out of the economy this year. That's about 2% of national income and £7 billion more than the government already plans. Some worry that will hurt growth this year instead.
Clearly there's a need to cut the fiscal deficit, but the Conservative plan to cut £6 billion from public spending in 2010-11 will be taking in spending power out of the economy just at the time when the recovery is underway and potentially weak and fragile.
Now, in the debate tonight, Mr Osborne said the gap left by public spending cuts will be filled by growth in the rest of the economy. And some experts agree with him, while others agree with his opponents that it's too risky to push through extra cuts this year. But we do know that the gap in the public finances under a Conservative government has not been made much smaller by the measures Mr Osborne has announced today. Hugh.
Stephanie, thank you very much. And we'll pick up straight away and talk to our political editor, Nick Robinson, who's at Westminster for us. Nick, this announcement today, let's talk about the impact, let's talk about the logic of it.
Well, it's quite a surprise, Hugh, because it's quite a change from the rhetoric and indeed the substance that we saw at the Tory conference. There, the warning was of an age of austerity. The spelling out was going on of specific tough policies to save money and cut the deficit, freezes in pay, cuts to public sector pensions and the like. Ever since then, perhaps as the polls have tightened, the Tories have really softened their rhetoric, and today unveiled a kind of political three-card trick, promising that they could cut taxes, yes, and cut the deficit, but no, not cut spending on vital public services. Now, they know that each of those individually, those cards, are popular with the electorate. Their opponents, of course, will say, not a three-card trick, merely a trick. It cannot be delivered, will be the claim that you'll hear from now till election day. It wasn't the only thing that we actually learnt, though, today. The Chancellor slipped up slightly in the Chancellor's debate tonight, giving away an announcement that is due to be made by Gordon Brown tomorrow on the vital issue of social care and how it's all paid for. Alistair Darling revealed, just 24 hours early, that the government have ruled out the so-called death tax, at least as a compulsory option. No one will be forced, in other words, to pay from their estate for their social care. It will be one option, but there will be a range of options that we're told will be unveiled in that important proposal that will come tomorrow.
All right, Nick, thank you very much. Nick Robinson there at Westminster. Now, the Russian government says it will